Welcome back in, Clay Travis, Buck Sexton Show. Appreciate all of you hanging out with us. Joined now by Tucker Carlson, who has got a brand new business that he is launching. I believe it launched yesterday. I'm sure that many of you have already checked it out. Tucker, thanks for coming on the show. Let us know what you got cooking. What's the new business and how's it going to be set up?
Gentlemen, thank you for having me. Well, it's a streaming service, and the point, I'm not a business person, but I am a free speech person, and the point is to protect speech from advertising boycotts and pressure from corporations. And really the only way to do that is to build a subscription service where people, pay for some percentage of the content that they watch, and then you're a fortress. There's no one can shut you up at that point. And that's a conclusion that I've come to after a lot of years of doing this and having been shut up a few times through advertiser boycotts or corporate pressure or whatever, it happens. But I think going particularly into this next 12 months, you're going to need outlets that can't be shut up. You literally can't make them be quiet. And you don't have to watch if you don't want. You don't have to listen if you don't want. But if you do want information that's honest and that's not being controlled or edited by people with interests they're not disclosing, it's really important to have that, especially in an election year. So that's what we're building.
Hey, Tucker, it's Buck. I see that Elon, of course, now that he is for free speech, the left has decided that he's like public enemy number one, even though he's arguably doing more for, the issue of climate change and clean energy and all this than any other human being in history. They don't care. They hate him because he's for free speech. Is what you're doing really enabled or even just made possible because X exists at this point as a place? Because, people ask me, I don't even bother posting really on Facebook or these things anymore. People can post for me sometimes, but they're not free speech places at all. So is X kind of a critical ingredient in the plan? And how does Elon's vision and your vision, how do they intersect?
Are you kidding? Yes. And by the way, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, you can reach a big audience with any of these. YouTube, Mr. Beast does. Mr. Beast is the biggest creator on YouTube, and he is because he never crosses any lines. I'm not attacking the guy. He does something very different, but no one with political views that are out of sync with the, 3% of the population whose views are imposed on the rest of us, no one could exist on any of those platforms telling the truth, period. So you're right, it's not even worth it. X is the only big media platform in the world that has free speech. There's only one left, and that's because of Elon. Whatever you think of him. And he was, after my kids, was the first person to call me after our show got canceled. And, he didn't offer me money or to hire me, but he just said, I want you to know that we have this platform. Our commitment to free speech is real, and invite you on. And we took him up on it, just as anyone else could. We didn't get a special deal. And I've been grateful for it ever since. We've made precisely zero money, but I don't really care. There's a lot going on, and I wanted to continue to talk about it and to, interview people and go around the world and talk to people saying interesting things and record interesting developments. And I can't stand the idea of being silenced. I don't think any American should stand for that. It's actually, I try not to work myself into a frenzy, but it's pretty unbelievable that everybody I know in this country, all born here, all Americans by birth, committed to staying here, they can't have a conversation. You're afraid to talk to people about controversial, quote, controversial things over your phone because it's being monitored or could be. Even with the phone in the room, they can use it to listen to you. Who's they? The government. And not just our government, other governments. So the whole thing is so crazy. It's gotten so North Korean where everybody is afraid to think that anything I can do, and my staff from Fox, we brought most of our staff with us, and I'm grateful for that, very grateful for that. But anything we can do to add, to a conversation that's real, that's not defined by lying, we're going to do, and that's what we're doing.
We're talking to Tucker Carlson. I know you have already been asked about this, but let me just make my pitch here. If Trump came to me and he said, Clay, I want you to tell me who I should pick as vice president, my answer is you. And my answer is you because I think you can communicate what Trump is often trying to say and sometimes getting attacked and not being able to be the best defender of his perspective. And that's not a shot at Trump. It's just more of a compliment for you. I think you would be the most effective vice president that he could possibly pick. And I told him this. You heard it. I said it on the radio directly to him. He responded, said he was going to consider you. So if Trump really came to you, Tucker, and if he said, I think that in order to win and run the best version of a campaign in 2024, you are my guy, are you really telling me you would say, can't do it?
Well, I'll just say three things. One, the only reason I'm being asked about it at all is because you brought it up.
You're
so
welcome.
I don't know
You're welcome.
whether to thank you or attack
what do
you.
you think about Tucker for VP? And I'm like, well, we kind of started that whole thing, so I think, you know.
But by the way, before you finish your answer, you can come back to your three-parter here. Melania, to be fair, Axios had a report, which I'm sure you saw, where Melania Trump said it should be Tucker. Now, whether that's true or not, Trump does listen to his wife. I think, and I said this on the show earlier this week, I think he blamed her for his endorsement of Dr. Oz, which is very funny. So in the event it didn't go well, he might blame her if you were the pick. But how would you respond? Trump says, I need you. You're my guy. We're going to win. Otherwise, I'm concerned nobody else can do what you can do. You would respond how?
Well, I would just say first that only proves that Melania listens to your show. Which is pretty flattering, I think. So second, I would say I am in sync with Donald Trump's big ideas. You know, I definitely was not in sync with some of his staff choices at all. But the ideas that he ran on, you know, have a secure border, a trade policy that helps your own country, maybe fight fewer pointless wars. Right? I mean, it's not complicated. That's an extremely moderate, sensible, middle-of-the-road, non-ideological platform. And the only reason that most people don't recognize that is because of the torrents of propaganda that have distorted it. And so I think if you say those things slowly, calmly, in a this is your captain speaking voice that people can hear, it is hard to believe that anybody could be opposed to that. Fight fewer pointless wars? Like, what is the point of NATO? Or just, like, we can have discussions about these things, but I think common sense will prevail if we do it in a calm way. That's my personal view. As for my role in that, I mean, I'm, like, pretty happy with what I'm doing. I can't imagine being in politics, honestly. I don't like the people in politics. I like Trump. I think he's hilarious. He's fun to be with. He actually cares about the country and cares about people. That's real. I've seen it. But, you know, most people in politics, and particularly the consultant class, I mean, I've spent my whole life around them, covering campaigns and living in Washington. And, like, not one of them's ever been to my house for dinner. You know, I invite the homeless to my house for dinner. Everyone can come to my house for dinner except political people. They just can't because they're too fake. And I just can't deal with that. So the idea of being around fake people, even for a meal, much less a career, is like horrifying to me. So, I mean, I don't know. I guess I would assess it if that incredibly unlikely thing happened to me and I felt like there was something I could contribute. And the last thing I'll say is, I don't like people who seek power. I don't, and I never have. And I also don't like people whose like goal is to become rich. I don't like that either. And I know those are unpopular views, but I mean it. And I'm just going to say it because I don't care anymore. I just don't like, if you want a lot of power over me, you should not have power over me. That's how I feel. And if your goal in life is to have more money than you can spend, then you disgust me. That's called greed. It's like eating more food than you can digest, which is gluttony. It's just gross. And so those are just not, you know what I mean? Like if you get rich in the process, that's great. And if you get powerful in the process because people, you know, want your leadership, I get it. That's a byproduct, though. That's not a goal. And politics draws a lot of people who want to be rich and famous and powerful for the sake of being rich and famous and powerful. And that's just like absolutely repugnant to me. Sorry.
Well, frankly, Clay, a lot of people are talking probably about Tucker as VP, the best, great VP, really wonderful. We'll talk about it. We can get into some other stuff too.
By the way, that whole answer, Tucker, just solidified for me why you should be the pick. You just nailed it.
Come on. No, that's
Clay
like, you know, I wouldn't join any club that would have me.
Oh, man.
All right, he's going to come back.
You should have heard him on the Mike Pence interview. If you don't answer a question for Clay, he never lets it go.
Now, that was the perfect answer. That's the answer I would want Trump's VP to give. When we come back, Tucker's going to stick with us. We'll close out the show. We'll get him with some more questions. Probably MIT, Harvard, Penn, what happened there, and where does he see things going in 2024 as we progress.
Welcome back to Clay and Buck. Final segment of the day, and it's a doozy. We've got our friend Tucker Carlson here. He just launched the Tucker Carlson Network. Go sign up. Go subscribe. Tucker, switching gears here on the topics for a second, beyond the possibility of like a VP and Tucker administration in the future. Administration, the president of Harvard is not losing her job. I think it's interesting to see who was surprised by this on the right and who wasn't. I was not surprised. I'm sure you were not surprised. But what does this tell us, if anything?
Well, I mean, it tells you that DEI is a religion. Of course, she's a holy person. And it also tells you that not just Harvard, which is obviously the pinnacle of our higher education system, but the entire system is a joke. Because the worst thing about Gay is not that she's an open bigot, which she is and has always been, but that she's an idiot. I mean, she's a scholar who goes by the term doctor, though she can't take out your appendix, who's never written a book. So I'm a hack journalist. I've written a bunch of books. I wrote them myself because, I don't know, I like to read books. So I wrote books. She's a scholar. If you look at her scholarship, she's a professor of African American studies or something. It's not even a real discipline. And she's produced no real academic work. So like in the end, leaving aside the demonstrations and even the question of free speech, higher education is about education. And if the top scholar at a university can't even be bothered or is not even capable of writing a single book, you're a joke. And everyone has known that. The overseers of Harvard have known that. All the people who are paying close attention to the school, which is a lot of people, probably too much attention to the school, have known that. And no one said a word about it. And it's like, how was this allowed to? How'd you get a dumb person running Harvard? And at least Larry Summers, who is a very abrasive, difficult person who I have a lot of trouble talking to because he's so annoying, at least he's indisputably a scholar. He's smart. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no doubt. We talked about that earlier. I mean, he got in trouble for saying something that is a fact, which is men tend to be better at math and women tend to be better at verbal related skills. Like, that's not an attack upon biology. That's just a reality. And yet you've got this woman who is plagiarizing and is blatantly, not supportive of free speech for anyone that has a different opinion than her. And that leads me into this question, Tucker. You've been in media for most of your adult life. Are you pessimistic or optimistic? There you go. Are you pessimistic or optimistic with the trend lines that you see for media as we begin the 2024 presidential campaign? And I don't just mean over the next 10 months. I mean with what you see on the larger landscape. How would you assess where we are right now, not only as a nation, but also as a world, in terms of freedom of speech and the status of media in general?
Well, I mean, this is like not the first media earthquake I've seen. When I got into the media business over 30 years ago, I was a fact checker. That was my first job. And I literally called people on the phone to check facts. And then I looked them up in a bunch of bound volumes in my office. Okay. The internet existed, but we did not take it seriously when I started. I'd never used a computer, not one time, when I started work as a journalist, okay? So now we're at the end of the era that began then, which was the era of, centralized big media outlets, and they're dying, and it's unmistakable. Their death is unmistakable if you take 3 steps back, and they're being replaced by independent voices who by definition are much harder to control. And that's where the balance of the audience is moving. Streaming is not just like something you do on the side. Streaming is the media now. And so, yeah, I mean, in 5 years, will NBC News exist? No, it won't. In its current form, it will not exist. And none of these places will. And so I think that's good news because they couldn't be worse than they are now, for one. And for another, they really are being replaced by, I was looking up somebody's guy I know in the mainstream media business who now has an independent podcast. I won't name him. I'm sure you know him. And he's like gone off to do this weird thing, whatever he's doing. I looked up the numbers that he's getting on YouTube. They're crazy. He's getting like 1 million viewers a video. And this is just some random guy who's doing this out of his house. And so, yes, everything is changing right before us. It's hard to see its outlines because we're in the middle of it. but I think it's a great thing. Great. More people listen to you guys and to Russell Brand and Jimmy Dore and people who I wasn't even that familiar with 10 years ago, if at all, then pay attention to the Today Show. That's real.
Tucker, it's a little uplifting here at the end of the show, and I guess I'm possibly taking it in the wrong direction, but what happens if they throw Trump into prison or house arrest or something? We just had Andy McCarthy on. He was talking to us about this possibility, and he thinks it's a very real one.
Yeah, I think Andy may be for it, but leaving aside that, I think you could have chaos. I mean, the people, I don't know the answer. I'm just throwing that out there. It seems that way. But, the same people who lecture us about democracy are about to short circuit it. I mean, just keep in mind that the things that Trump is being charged for are ridiculous. Like the whole thing is BS, okay? So the fact they're trying to imprison this guy who is the unequivocal frontrunner in the presidential race, running against a senile man who's wrecked the country. I mean, the whole thing is grotesque. And again, we're too in the weeds. Step back. This is crazy town. And if they do that, then it's just like a shutdown of our historic, 250-year-old democracy. That's what we're looking at. And I don't know what the response to that will be. I hope it's very forceful. It needs to be, because if that is allowed, then all bets are off. The Bill of Rights means nothing. No more elections. Like, how can you have an election after that? You imprison the guy who's going to run the race for bringing documents home when the incumbent president did the same thing? It's
just promise us at the inauguration ball we're close to the alcohol.